But this is completely out of the question, Vadim. How are we going to live like this? Christina was furious at the recent news that their friends had shocked them with. The couple rented a room in their apartment. They didn't let other neighbors move into the two-room apartment. They just kept one room where the owners kept personal belongings locked, and Vadim and Christina lived alone. They are already accustomed to the fact that the kitchen, bathroom, and the rest of the space are completely at their disposal. And then friends reported that the son of their acquaintances would soon arrive and they would give him a second room. Listen, we knew from the very beginning that they could rent out the second room to someone. We were just lucky, said Vadim. The wife snorted displeasedly and went into the kitchen. She had long hinted that it was time to get her own apartment, but Vadim was categorically against taking out a mortgage, and renting an apartment from friends was very profitable, and they set an acceptable price and the payment date could be postponed without any problems. These are friends after all. Vadim recently radically changed his field of activity in order to earn much more in the future. Therefore now I was at the beginning of the career ladder and the salary was small. And until this day they were very lucky. No one moved in with them. They lived as if in their own apartment. And then friends said that the son of their acquaintance was coming to their city during the session. He was a student, had to pass all the exams and leave. Vadim treated this as ordinary life circumstances, but Christina took it as an interference in their personal life. How can she now walk calmly in her home when there will also be a stranger present there? My husband asked me not to get upset so quickly because this is all temporary. Besides, perhaps the new neighborhood won't be so terrible. Still, the person will come to study. Vadim immediately imagined Zubrilu with glasses, who would sit in his room all day and read textbooks. A week has passed. One day Vadim returned from work just on time. Their new neighbor was just moving into the apartment. Christina has been working remotely from home for the last 6 months, so she was already greeting guests in the hallway. "Hello, I'm Pasha." The young man shook Vadim's hand and greeted Christina. The husband became a little gloomy. The student looked completely different from what he had imagined. He was a tall, athletic young man. He did not look like a nerd at all. Moreover, he definitely had no end to girls. He was handsome and looked extremely confident. They introduced themselves to each other and helped the guests settle into the room. Over the next couple of days, she and Pavel did not see each other very often. He went somewhere on his own business in the morning, Vadim was at work, and Christina worked from home. Then he began to visit the apartment more often. It was at this time that we got to know him better. It turned out that he not only looked confident, but was so. It was clear that he considered himself better than the rest. An arrogant look, not a hint of embarrassment, he immediately began to behave like the master of his own home. A couple of days later, he even brought some girl into his room, apparently a fellow student. They locked themselves in there, and at night through the thin wall you could hear everything they were doing. Christina and Vadim had already gone to bed at this time, but could not sleep because of the noise coming from the next room. Christina tossed and turned and wailed. "Well, they gave us a neighbor. It's a nightmare. No shame, no conscience. He wasn't even embarrassed to bring the girl home." "Come on, it's a young business. He'll soon move away from us," the husband answered, trying to turn it all into a joke. "Yes, it would be quick. I told him in the evening not to make any noise. I'm a very light sleeper, but now they're having so much fun." His wife hissed, already starting to knock on the wall. The next morning, Christina and Vadim went to breakfast. The neighbor's companion had already left, and he himself came out of the shower in only a towel. "Pasha, at least you should get dressed," Vadim shouted to him. The young man looked in their direction, smiled slyly, and slowly went to his room. Vadim was worried. This wonderful neighbor moved into the apartment. What if he walks around like this in front of his wife? "Yeah, I definitely need to buy my own place," he thought to himself. Lost in his thoughts, the man did not even notice how his wife blushed after the neighbor appeared. Over the next couple of days, when my husband returned from work, he observed an amazing picture. Christina's anger and dissatisfaction towards the student disappeared somewhere. More and more often he noticed how they talked over a cup of tea and laughed together. He saw some interest in the young guy in his wife's gaze and began to get a little jealous. Fortunately, then the exams began and Pavel disappeared from view for a while. One day, a man returned from work early. There weren't many orders today. He managed to do all the important things, so he was already hurrying home with a delicious cake from his favorite bakery. Entering the apartment, he immediately felt something was wrong. From the kitchen came Christina's boisterous laughter and some extraneous noise. The man took off his street shoes and headed towards the sounds. Entering the kitchen, he saw his wife sitting very close to Pavel, and together they were watching some video on his phone. The husband's cheeks immediately flushed with anger. "Christina, come with me, we need to talk," he said loudly, indicating for his wife to follow him into their room. The wife got up and followed Vadim, and at that moment the young man looked up at the man and smiled crookedly. "What are you doing? I come and here you are sitting almost on this guy's lap." She herself was furious that he was here now, hissed the husband, actively gesticulating. "Vadim, what are you doing? What are your knees? Why are you exaggerating? We were just watching a funny video together. We got to talking. The guy is absolutely normal," Christina answered calmly. "Don't be angry. Did something happen at work?" she asked softly. The husband began to calm down a little. He himself did not expect that emotions would wash over him so much. He usually didn't react like that, and there was never a reason to. But a strange premonition and suspicion did not leave him, so he decided to take a desperate step. One weekend, when Pavel went to see his friends and Christina went to visit her parents, Vadim ordered small hidden cameras via the internet. I installed one in the kitchen and the other in their room. The second room, in which the student was located, was closed, so it was not possible to place a camera there. But Vadim still looked happy. Now he will be able to see what his wife and this young guy are doing in his absence. The next week, the man sat at work as if on pins and needles. During short breaks, he kept turning on an application, broadcasting what was happening in his apartment. Everything looked quite normal. Christina was working on the computer in her room, but Pavel was not in sight. He was probably sitting at home. The husband even calmed down and already thought that he had started all this in vain. But he still put the phone in front of him on the table and sometimes glanced at it. About an hour later, the picture changed. Christina and Pavel went to the kitchen. We started watching some videos together again. Then the husband noticed how the young guy began to stroke his wife on the back, and she did not even think of resisting. Then they kissed. The husband jumped up from his workplace. Having quickly warned his colleagues that he urgently needed to leave for family reasons, he broke down and went home. Along the way, he still watches the video from the cameras, where everything was already in full swing. Pretty soon he was on his way up to the apartment and flew into the kitchen. First, Pavel flew to the side, who did not even have time to figure out what was happening. Seeing his enraged husband, the guy quickly grabbed the things that were lying nearby and cowardly ran away to his place. At that moment, Christina was already shyly covering herself with a t-shirt and crying. Everything was like delirium. Her husband shouted at her in rage, but she could not utter a word. Vadim never understood what was the catalyst for this conflict. The accumulated discontent of his wife, the sudden appearance of a young guy, or something else, but he knew for sure that he would not be able to forgive such behavior. He no longer wanted to stay in this apartment. Yes, over the years he had already gotten used to this house, but now he would hardly be able to stay here calmly. He packed his things and went to a hotel for a while until he found another apartment. They divorced Christina, although she begged to forgive her and save the marriage. But Vadim decided for himself long ago that he would not tolerate betrayal. After all, what happened once will most likely happen again.